Good morning. Another update on the Southern Pacific 1744 out at the Pacific Locomotive Association's yard in Brightside, California. It's a stormy, rainy Saturday. We're happy it's raining because it'll help with the drought, but it is a little difficult to work outside in the rain. But we are going to be in the shop a little bit today and talk about some of the progress we've made on the frame. You can probably see the frame in the back. We've been doing a lot of welding to repair areas that were worn on the frame, and then there's one cross member that was broken in service several times, and Southern Pacific welded it, repaired it, and then probably towards the end of steam they just welded the whole thing onto the frame rather than having it bolted. So we had to get all that off, and that's been taken off, and the broken piece of steel, which is about a 2 by 4 inch piece of steel, we had to make a new cross member, and we're getting to the point now where we're going to be bolting it back on the frame. So that's some of the stuff we've been doing on the frame. We also been working on the running gear, the springs. We'll show you a little bit of some of the suspension that we're making new bushings and pins and boring the holes and that type of stuff. And we're making some progress on that. And unfortunately, we won't have anybody doing any boring today, but maybe in the next update. You never know what will happen. So you can't really tell because it's so beautiful and finished and painted now, but this is one of the areas. This was actually worn down about 1/4 of an inch. The boiler support bracket sits right here, and then the other side of the frame as well. We had to weld that up because basically the boiler, when it heats up, it expands just like any piece of metal, and it'll expand maybe 1/4 inch, going from 70 degrees up to the 400 degree temperature where you're generating steam. So it's important that these supports can move back and forth on the frame. Part of the reason there's a lot of damage to the boiler when it was taken apart was it wasn't able to move. It was actually bound up here, and that's putting a lot of stress because the boiler wants to expand but it can't, so it's pushing all that stress into the inside of the boiler. So we'll get this all done and fix the support bracket. We'll be in good shape going forward, and we'll preserve all that work that we're doing on the boiler. So this welding is actually a lot of work. Like I said, it was 1/4 inch or more of wear on this frame, and it's a specific procedure you have to follow because we don't want to put a lot of stress by heating the frame up when you're doing the welding. So one of the guys that came over with the 2479 group, John Blaine, is actually a professional welder. So he was huge in helping us finish this. One of our volunteers, he started it, and then John kind of finished doing all the welding. It was several months, of 3 or 4 hours on a Saturday to do these 2 spots. So we're really lucky to have John be able to do that because it would have taken us a lot longer to get it done. So this is that frame cross member I was talking about that was broken. It was actually at the other end, it was actually snapped all the way across, and they had welded it, and they had welded it here and everywhere they could weld it to try to keep it in place. So we ground all that off and got the old one off, and then this is a new one, which I can't lift this end, but we've got this in with a taper bolt. These are put in with taper bolts so that when you get them set, it doesn't move again. It basically, the hole's not drilled straight, it's drilled at a taper. So we're still working on building a new taper bolt for the other side. But this was a big project, getting it all machined and set up to mount it on the frame. This is the shoe, and this is the wedge. We've put them up on the frame. We have one for each driving box. There's one up here as well. This is what your axle for your driver is in this slot, and there's a big box with a bearing that sets in here. So the driving box doesn't rub up against the frame. This shoe and wedge provides a bearing surface. And these are bronze, which is nice, but you want these to be a softer material than the frame and the box, because then these are what wears rather than the frame and the box. You're still going to have a little wear, but these are your sacrificial bearing material. And these are all set to certain dimensions to keep this axle perpendicular to the frame, and then also spaced. It's a 260, so you got certain distances between axles so that the drive rods fit onto the pins. And that's called tramming. So we got them up here. We were doing some preliminary tramming, and that's why they're up here. We wanted to measure this distance for the box machining and see how they were fitting. You can also see this one is tapered. The reason this is tapered is this is the wedge. So as you're running a steam locomotive, there's a lot of reciprocating motion. This box is getting moved back and forth every time you have a stroke from the piston. Coming back, it shoves the box up against here. And then when you go the other direction, it comes up here. So over time you get wear, and then you'll get motion in here. Well, this wedge, you can screw it up and take out that motion. And you can hear the pounding when one of these is loose. It pounds pretty hard on the frame of the locomotive. So, and it doesn't take much. There's a lot of force. These were redone back in Texas when this engine was rebuilt in the early 2000s. So they're in good shape. We just need to do a lot of measurements so when we machine the boxes, they'll work for how these are set up. Yeah, we can see we were talking about the frame cross member and how SP had repaired it and welded it, and it had broken. They welded it again. Well, you can see the same type of thing. This is the next cross member forward, and it may have been moving, and you can see SP's welded it. Not the best welds. Towards the end of steam, they knew all these engines were going to be retired and scrapped, so they just did whatever they needed to keep them running until the end. So this may be a late repair. This is the bottom support for that boiler support bracket, and because it had worn so far into the frame, it was shoving down more on this lower support. And you can see where these were rivets. They've really worn down into the hole. We're going to have to weld each one of these up and ream them back out. You know, this is stuff you got to fix, and you wonder why things take so long. And I mean, each one of these is going to be a lot of work to get reamed back out, drilled and reamed. So, you know, we could spend a day working on each one of these. So there's 3 or 4 days worth of work right there for a couple volunteers. We were talking about the boiler support bracket that had worn the frame. Well, this is it. It's setting as it would set on the frame. But you can see when I rotate it up like this that it's basically a shoe, and this shoe sits on top of the frame, and it's able to move back and forth. It's all worn too. We're gonna machine it and clean it up, but this is what did all the wear. 120 years of sitting on that frame did some damage, and we've had the same problem with some of the other locomotives we've had to fix. Yeah, I know we're doing a 1744 update, but since we're standing right next to the shop, we have a new girl here. 2479 was a big deal to get this locomotive moved from San Jose up here to Niles Canyon. And the volunteers that came with the 2479 put a bunch of stuff back on it. We had to take a lot of stuff off to get it moved. Things like the steps, this whole front pilot or plow had to come off. So they've been working on it a little bit at a time, putting stuff back on. and there's still plenty of stuff to move. So they're still moving stuff from San Jose, and it's a big project, just another big project. So now we have this one, and just across the way on the other track to 1744, sitting really close to each other. The volunteers, with the 2479, we're really lucky. They've all kind of come over, and they fit right in with what we're doing here in Niles Canyon, and they've jumped in to help us on the 1744 because that's our #1 project. And the quicker we get that done, the sooner we'll get back to working on this. But this is being worked on as well while we're working on the 1744. So it's a balancing act, but we're really lucky. We have those volunteers, and they bring a whole bunch of skills that we can use, and they're great people, and we're having a lot of fun working with them, which is what this is all about. Working with a good group of people to make a difference on this historic equipment.
Okay, morning. We're here at the shop. I think you heard from Alan outside on all the work that's getting done on the frame and the cross members. This is one of the pieces that he's talking about that we sort of have to, machine and make from scratch. You can't, take out a part number from a catalog and order it up. It's custom made. I mean, you can pay people to make these, but it costs a fortune, and we kind of like to do it ourselves because it's fun and it's interesting, and it's a good project. This is a taper pin here. This is going to be what fastens that cross member to the frame itself. And what's important about when you're making a taper pin is the fit of the pin to the hole. And the whole reason it's tapered is to make a really solid seal, and so that it's sort of an integrated member of the frame. With a bolt, if it's just a straight through clearance, it can slowly over time sort of wiggle loose and work loose. But with the taper pin, that as long as the bore of the hole and the seat of the taper match each other, it'll fit sort of like a glove, and it'll seal all that up really tight. But then that, when you're machining it, you've got to make sure that all the tolerances are right, and that you kind of slowly but surely take a little pass and a little pass, and as soon as you get comfortable with it, that's when you end up taking too much. And once you've taken too much, it's all over. You got to start again. So we take our time and try to do it the right way and the safe way, and it's a good project, and we've got a million more to make. So that's what I'm working on today.
These two pieces of steel are part of the spring rigging system on the locomotive. They equalize between the second and the third driver, and the firebox sits right over the area or over the frame between the second and third driver. So you can't have the spring up above the frame like you have farther forward on the locomotive. So these two pieces sit inside the frame, in between the axles, and there's actually a spring that's in here, and then this helps with the equalization between the second and third drivers. Well, we found a lot of issues with these, and we've been pulling pins and bushings. We had to take them apart. They actually mount together, and then these new pins that we made, they fit in these holes. And then the spring will fit in here and ride on some large pins, which we have here. So we got a lot of different stuff. We got to put it all together. Fortunately, another one of the 2479 volunteers, Art, has been doing a lot of this machining for us. So we got new bushings. We bored all these holes out that we're going to put the bushings in. These are they're ready. We're going to take them down and get them hardened. That way they won't wear in service. So we'll get these hardened, get them pressed in, and then we can put these two back together, and then we're working on the other side. We're making pretty good progress. Maybe next time we do an update, these will be together, and on the locomotive inside the frame. These small changes that we've made take many hours of volunteer time, machining, grinding, cleaning, setting it up, measuring. So there's a lot going on, even though it doesn't look like there's been a lot of progress. We're also making progress on the boiler as well. They have made a lot of stay bolts, and the caps and sleeves are made, and we're going to be starting to put those in. Stockton Locomotive Works is going to be starting to put those in. So things are moving along, and we just wanted to give you a little short update. You can always check on our website, www.ncry.org, and take a look there. There are updates. If you go to the 1744 link under our equipment list, you'll be able to see some of the work we're doing, and then it'll also take you to the STEAM website. We are doing a fundraiser right now for stay bolts. We've been raising money last year, and they're continuing it this year. So if you want to donate, we always welcome donations. We're always looking for people to help. If it looks really fun to be working out in the rain on a steam engine, you're in the right place. Come on down, And we thank you for watching, and we'll give you a future update as we move along on the restoration of the Southern Pacific 1744.